Hey everyone, Karnak here, Star Wars Armada Explained. Thanks for joining me. I'm excited to be back to be doing videos. We're going to be covering new objectives from Rebelling the Rim. Of course, we've got a bunch of new cards from Rebelling the Rim, SSD, man, tons of new stuff coming our way. I'm doing the objectives first because obviously that's what is going to be most important for people to understand. And there's a lot here. As you can see here for the card we're doing first, Doom Station, lots of text, and this is one of the more simpler cards to dive into. So with these objectives in Rebellion the Rim, there's new definitions, new terms. The most important keyword for you to take away from, especially from this video towards future videos, is the keyword toward. And I'll make sure to explain that in future videos. But toward, like in the objective card, I wish that they had bolded or italicized, put in italics that keyword, because that's important. Like a lot of people are just going to read that, skip right over it, not understand what it means because it's explained in the book what that keyword means, and it's kind of a lot of detail, and it's easy for people to miss. I know on my first read through, I didn't quite understand. So let's start with Doom Station. So Doom Station includes the Gravity Rift. It's the only new token or obstacle that is in Doom Station. Now, the Gravity Rift is an obstacle, meaning that if you're trying to draw a line of sight through it for an attack, it still obstructs attacks for ships and squadrons. It does have some interesting mechanics. Let me read it. Gravity Rift. Gravity Rifts resolve several effects depending on the ship or squadron's distance to the obstacle. When a ship deploys at distance 1 to 2 of the gravity rift, its speed dial must be set to speed 0. So very similar to the Interdictor's G7's gravity thing, where if you deploy, you're at speed 0. And remember, when you're measuring the at distance from an obstacle to a ship, you're measuring from closest point to closest point. So from the cardboard of the obstacle to the closest plastic point of the physical ship base, not including the shield dials, but you're not measuring to the black cardboard, which is for an attack. So closest to closest. Okay. Next part is when a ship overlaps a gravity rift, its speed dial must be reduced to 0. So if you're going fast at speed 4 and you clip this thing at the end of your movement, you're going to go instantly to speed 0. So that's bad, and hopefully don't do that. When a ship at distance 1 to 2 of a gravity rift resolves the determined course step, its speed is temporarily reduced by 1 to a minimum of speed 0 until the end of that maneuver. Again, same wording as the G8 upgrade card for experimentals, again for interdictors. So essentially, if you're going at speed 3, when you go to plan your movement, you're actually doing that movement at speed 2. So again, if you're going speed 1, well, now you're going speed 0. And again, you can't do engine text because it's going to keep slowing you down. What's great about these gravity rifts is that, it's obviously it's a new thing, but like these can be used both offensively, defensively. There's just so many uses, and it's such an interesting mechanic that's going to add more variety to these games. And the gravity risks. Don't be scared of them. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to go speed 0. I need to stay away from it. Aggressive players are going to capitalize on riding that distance 1 to 2 edge and being able to still get in on target. You got to watch out for things like the interdictor grav shift reroute. After fleets are deployed, the interdictor might shove this in your face. The new rebel officer Ezra Bridger in Rebelling the Rim, his special ability is he gets discarded, but if he's near an obstacle, he can push that obstacle around. And so I think you'll see a lot of Rebel players wanting to play Gravity Rift with Ezra Bridger, and they're going to want to shove these in your face if you're not careful. So let's dive into some more read. I know it's more reading, but I want to make sure I'm covering everything. And again, I'll make sure that I'm highlighting the important bits. So when you're moving obstacles around on the board, like with this objective, we haven't read more, but what this objective will require is that obstacles are going to get moved around. The important takeaways is when you need to measure to determine how that obstacle is to be moved, You determine the direction by looking at the closest point, again, to the closest point the direction it needs to move towards, whether that be a ship or a component or something else. You determine the direction. When you're moving that obstacle, if there's anything on it, you have to take everything off it so you can then pick it up and move it. It's important to try, if you can, get extras. I mean, if you got a core set in the Krillin conflict, that's more than sufficient for obstacles, I feel. Excuse me, if you want to pick up 2 copies of Rebellion the Rim just so you have extras to move stuff around, I guess you can. That's your prerogative. It's just nice to have so that you're not knocking everything aside to grab it and then trying to put everything back afterwards. So when you're moving the obstacle to its final position, it cannot overlap ships, squadrons, other obstacles, or tokens in the play area. What kind of tokens would also be in the play area? Well, like the new proximity mines. If there were any objective tokens in this objective, there isn't, but in other objectives, there could be objective tokens. Obstacles can't move on to those. Also, for example, the any tokens that the interdictor must leave in the play area, like the G7, it can't move on to that either. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so can't overlap anything. It can be rotated as much as you want, as long as you make sure that it's not rotating past that distance 2 or whatever distance is specified from how it was originally placed. Okay. It can move through anything to, only its starting and final positions matter. If a token is placed on it due to an objective or some other effect, that token that's on the obstacle remains on that obstacle when it moves around. And let's see, when an obstacle moves, the player moving that obstacle can choose for it to remain in its current position unless minimum movement distance is specified. So you can just pick it up, put it right down, just like with, for example, Mauler Mythil when he's doing his little jump attacks, if there's nobody stopping him from conducting his movement. Okay. So as I mentioned before, I know it's a lot. I know. Well, visual learners, all of us, we'll get to it, but I just got to read a little bit more here. So remember that toward keyword I was telling you about? Let's read that. Some effects direct players to move an obstacle or token toward a ship, squadron, obstacle, other token, or portion of the play area. When this is specified, the player moving the obstacle must also follow these restrictions. This movement must be measured directly toward the other component, along a line from the closest point on the obstacle to the closest point on the other component. That obstacle or token must be moved from its current position to at least the line that marks the end of the distance band, matching the specified minimum movement. If that object cannot be moved at specified minimum distance, it must be moved from its current position as close as possible to the line that marks the end of the specified minimum distance band. What does this all mean, Karnik? Please explain it to me. Let's jump in. First, I need to resize these windows so I'm not blocking what you guys need to see. Perfect there. And that should be good there. All right, let's jump in. So we're going to read through the card in its entirety, and we're gonna play it out. So setup. First player places the gravity rift in the center. Now, one thing I want to point out about the center of the setup area is, I mean, you're not ever going to get the exact center. You're going to measure, to try to find it. You just try to place it as close into the center as you can possibly get, because remember, this game does allow for a margin of error. So you're not ever going to be perfect. Just try to get as close as you can. And when the second player places it, he can then say, first player, do you agree that that's the center? The first player can be like, yeah, that's great. Or you can be like, no, that's wrong. If the players can't agree on the center of the location, call a judge. They'll place it for you. But don't get to that point. It's not the end of the world. Place it in the center as best you can. Move on. Then starting with the first player, you place the remaining obstacles excluding the station. So I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but the gravity rift and the station are about the same size. And since the vassal doesn't have this on there yet, I'm just using the station as a stand-in because it's close enough. So I'm using the arm station there in the middle with the red box upside down. So you can tell that that's the gravity rift. Normal station over here is always going to stay right side up, and I'm not going to adjust how it's angled at all. Okay. So gravity rift placed in the center. First player, boom. Second, boom. And again, make sure that you're keeping the standard rules, which is beyond distance 1 of all of the obstacles. And again, not going into the player's deployment area. And boom, and boom, and boom, and boom. Something like that, okay? All right, actually, move that over a little bit. Okay. Next, the second player then needs to place the station just like in Contested Outpost. He places that station beyond distance 5 of both players' edges and beyond distance 1 of all obstacles. So again, he checks it all out. He's like, you know what? I'm going to place that station right there. Now, there's a lot of cool things about Doom Station. So it's pretty much like a Contested Outpost where you need a ship close to that outpost at the end of the round to claim victory points. What's great is that in a standard Contested Outpost, you typically try to find players who want to put things in corners because it makes it easier for your deployment and anticipating where your opponent's going to go. With this, for example, if you're second player, you could flip or reverse it. Maybe you don't want the first player to ever have a chance to score off the objective because I haven't read through the rest of it, but if any of these obstacles reach the gravity rift, they get destroyed. So you could like, well, why don't I keep reading? I don't want to jump too far ahead, I guess. I'm getting ahead of myself. Starting with the second player and alternating, each player chooses one obstacle that does not have an objective token on it and moves it to within distance 1 to 2 of its current location towards the gravity rift, which cannot be chosen. You cannot move the gravity rift unless, again, it's been moved by other upgrade card effects like Ezra Bridger or the Interdictor. But it just can't be chosen to be moved in this objective. Then that player places an objective token on that obstacle. When an obstacle touches the gravity rift, that obstacle is removed from the play area. After all obstacles are moved, each player sums the command values of their ships at distance 1 of the station. The player with the highest total gains 1 victory token. Then remove all objective tokens from the play area. The victory tokens are worth 20 points. Same as Contested Outpost. So this is like, again, Contested Outpost, Dangerous Territory rolled into one. So how do we determine how do these things move? Well, you check, does it have an obstacle token on it? No, you can, or objective token on it? No, you can move that obstacle. As soon as you're done moving it, for example, what it says here, you need to move it distance 1 to 2 toward the gravity rift. So the first thing you check is the direction, closest point to closest point. That's roughly the direction of travel it needs to go. Move it distance 1 to 2. We're just going to do something like that, for example. Okay, now it's moved. Then you take the objective, the objective token, throw it on there. Now you know that that has been moved. You can't move it again. Let's get into these obstacle movements, though. So remember what I said about the toward part? So that within, what a lot of people are going to initially mistake it, as I did, is that, oh, I just need to just nudge it just a little bit. There we go. I moved it within distance 1 to 2 towards the station. Boom, done. You know, all good, all gravy train. Let's continue on with the objective. That's not how this objective is played. It's not how it's played at all. The toward keyword, as if you remember, as I read, it specifies that you need to move that obstacle the minimum distance of the range band. What does that mean? Let me make a copy here. It means that when you move this obstacle, you just can't give it a little love tap nudge. You have to move it to the edge of the distance band towards the station, meaning that it needs to be touching that distance 1 range band. It has to move at least that much distance. Now, if you want, it can move further than that. It can go up to the range 2 band if you want, or any of the space in between here. But it has to move at least to the distance 1. And you can rotate it if you want, something like that. You know, if you want to get it a little bit more on the line there. Or you could rotate it to be like that. As long as it's moving to be at distance 1 of the range band with some portion of that obstacle, it has to move that distance. That's what the toward part is specifying. So that's why I wish they had bolded it or made that stand out to say, hey, this is extra important, don't miss this. And then, so when you do move it, you then, again, as before, place the obstacle on it. Now, again, if any of these obstacles reach that station, poof, gone. They're instantly taken out. Now, you don't have to move it that full distance like I did there. You know, again, it can just move to the edge of the range band, it's still not touching it. But some people maybe they want to chuck it off the table. Who knows? For the station, now again, the station, if you are just like contested outpost, when you finish, you want to be at distance 1 of it so you can claim the victory points from it. But the point of Doom Station is that everything is getting dragged towards a gravity rift. So a tactic that you can do to stop that station from sliding towards a gravity rift, you can throw your ship in the way. Now remember, your ship, it can't overlap your ship when it tries to move. So for example, if it wanted to move towards the gravity rift, it can only move that far because it can't get over your ship to be able to accomplish moving any closer than that. And also, when it's moving towards the station, it's not going to pop up and around to try to get around the ship or any object. It wants to take the shortest course to the gravity rift to get there. Excuse me. Now, what happens if something like, for example, if the ISD was something like that, can it jump over the Star Destroyer? If you want it to, but you don't have to. That's something like, for example, maybe that's what your opponent wants to do. It wants to get over your ship closer to the gravity rift or towards, where it can get away. But if you're the one moving it, again, if it can't reach the minimum specified distance, it'd be like, oh, it tried to move there. That's where I want it to move. It can't reach it. It goes back to its original position. So it can hit, and then like it can't go anywhere. So then it stays in place. Or again, if it's something like this, it can move a little bit closer to the Star Destroyer towards the station, but it's not really, again, going anywhere. But again, that I'm being absolutely clear, you have to move it to where it's touching that distance 1 band for the station. Great. I think I've covered pretty well in depth how that all works. All right. So to get back before about the point about this objective is it's crazy flexible. So maybe you're second player and you don't want the first player to get a chance to get any points at all. So maybe when you put the station down, you do put the station like super close, to the gravity rift. And then you just try to keep a ship in the way. You farm it for a round or two, then you bounce out, and then it gets eaten by the gravity rift, so that the first player can't score on it. Or maybe you're trying to use it as bait. You set it so far away that as it slowly moves towards the station, again, you're farming points off of it, but then you're also giving the first player a chance to rush in and try to claim points. It gives so much flexibility on how you want to play that I just find so fascinating in terms of, because I love anything that encourages more deployment strategy. Deployment is half this game. There's already a lot of thought that goes into it, but anything that is encouraging more strategizing in deployment for different tactics of how that objective is going to be used, I'm all for it. Okay, I'm going to read through this one more time, make sure I didn't skip anything. Okay, put in the center. Second player places the main station. We're making sure that we're moving those obstacles towards the rift within distance 1 to 2, but again, with that toward keyword, it has to move to the minimum of the distance 1 band. Make sure we're putting obstacle tokens on there. When they have been moved, when everything's been moved, then you take them all off after the points have been scored. Oh, I want to mention the end of round part of the second part, because again, it's a bookend. I think I covered that already, but maybe not. But essentially, there's 4 parts. Again, you've got the command, ship, squadron, and status phase. The end of round takes place after the status phase. So any Riken zombie ships are poof gone. They don't stick around. And yeah, you get 20 cool points from it. So this objective is fantastic. I definitely feel like you're going to see this objective all the time. But of course, if you feel like I missed anything, if I got anything wrong, if you still have questions, I know there's so many questions about these objectives, please be sure to post, let me know. As always, I'm here to do the best I can to answer questions for you, and hey, I'll catch you all guys next time.